schools. We invited two guests for that. First of that will be Jasper Holm from Aarhus, Denmark, and later we will hear from Karin Heremans, who is joining us today from Belgium, from the city of Antwerp. Before we go to the two speakers, I have a few technical things to tell you. First of all, this webinar is recorded and will be put on the internet later. And this also implies if you make any remarks in the chat boxes you see, they will also be visible for all the people who will watch this afterwards. This already brings me to the second thing, the chat boxes you find. If you have any questions or remarks to make, please join in. I see some people are already joining in, and you have the choice to type in English, that would be the left box, or type in German, that will be the other one on the right side. That are the technical things to say today. We're talking about radicalization at schools in the upcoming hour, and the first speaker we have is from Denmark. He's from Aarhus. His name is Jasper Holm. He's working, as he calls it himself, on the very green side, so in a very preventive stage, so that's why we start with him. I think I give you the floor. Jasper, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Martin, and hello to all of you around in Europe. Nice to be here with you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Rand for giving me this opportunity to give a presentation on one of my present favorite topics, the we, the me and the we, about early prevention in our schools. Could I please have my PowerPoints, Matthias? Yes. In my short presentation, I'm inspired by a lot of people, not least all the good presentations, dialogues and discussions on RAN meetings, and also by a lot of researchers and good people, for example, the Formers and Family Studies by Stein Siegeling and Misha de Winter, by Educating Against Extremism by Lynn Davies, by the Tim Perry, Jonathan Ball Foundation for Peace, and of course there, Kelly Simcock, the Sigerstedt Institute in Göteborg, by the good old man, Csikszentmihalyi, about behind the flow theory, Russ Green, psychologist Russ Green, and my two fellows from Denmark, Laura Gilliam and Preben Bertelsen. Today I'll focus on the educational system, knowing how important the holistic, the multi-agency approach is. I'll not focus on the families and the parents, knowing how important they can be in preventing violent extremism and radicalization. Also, I'm leaving necessary collaboration with the healthcare sector, the police, the social service, etc., and the giving coordination between those for a moment, which gives me and us the chance to focus directly on the teachers and the leaders in our schools and in the educational system. My presentation will focus on the absolute green field as mentioned by Martin, the green field of the scale of violent extremism and radicalization. In other words, I'll focus on what is going on in the daily life in our schools and in educational institutions, and how this daily life, in worst case, may plant seeds which again, worst case, may lead to a process which again, worst case, may end up in violent extremism and radicalization. I'll focus on different perspectives on inclusion and exclusion and the danger of marginalization and distance from the greater we. How can we develop an environment of free speech and critical thinking based on human rights in the class, in the school, so that the teacher and young people can say and mean what they want to say and mean, regardless to what the teachers, the other children, young people, friends say and mean. The environment should also build on respect for the good argument, the possibility to change meaning carried by and in respect for the rules for a good democratic discussion. How can we form our schools so that children and young people, by their own critical thinking, by their own knowledge, are able to take good and giving choices built on trust and good experiences? According to the life psychology developed by Professor Preben Bertelsen, no matter what conditions for our lives, we all strive in our own way for a life for ourselves and among others that is good enough. It means that children and young people in our schools and institutions daily are trying to have as good a grip on their life as possible. And again, it means that in our schools and institutions, they will all try to do as good as they are able to. Then it's very exciting to see if your best is enough to follow the demands and tasks of daily life, in particular in, excuse me, I have to switch on that. Excuse me again. Are your skills and mindset in balance with the demands and tasks of daily life, in particular, and life in general? If you almost every day are met by this kind of balance and even are challenged to your personal maximum, but no, not over your maximum, it's possible for you to build up self-efficacy, that is, build up trust in your own abilities, that is, so building up trust to the teachers, trust to the school, trust to the system. And if you have this trust, your abilities to meet the demands of the system and of life, then you may have good possibilities not only to be a part of it, but also be a giving and accepted part of the greater we. If, however, you often, maybe all the time, experience an unbalanced daily life where your skills and your mindset are challenged by tasks and demands that are too high, you will automatically be in a situation filled with negativism, and you maybe develop a negative definition of yourself marked by failing self-efficacy, and worst case, marked by exclusion. Your trust in yourself, your trust in your teacher, your trust in the school, your trust in the system are under pressure. You are under pressure. Are you able to reconstruct your possibilities to get into balance? And if not, are you able to get the needed help to reconstruct? Are you getting the needed help from the system, the school, the teacher? Unfortunately, many young people in this situation filled with negativism are not able to reconstruct the possibilities, and after a while, almost automatically and naturally, they start looking around for alternative communities to the communities the system offers them. We all fear social inclusion. We are dying to belong, and in other words, they often try to continue being themselves with their skills and mindset, but not as a part of the greater we, but in another community or other communities where they can get the needed positive feedback and status. Some children and young people may now begin to develop a new agenda regarding school. Staying away, not following the lessons, not doing homework, not respecting the rules, not respecting the teachers, causing maybe as much trouble as possible. They may now be in danger of being negatively labeled, that is, stigmatized by friends, their own parents, other parents, teachers, and so on. Labeled as those who don't want to go to school, them who do not respect the authorities, them who you maybe should be afraid of, etc. And if you're first stigmatized, it's often very difficult to get rid of the label again. Of course, there are many possible outcomes of this situation, but the teacher's role must not be estimated here. It's my impression, it's my impression that the daily requirements in our schools and educational institutions have been enlarged over the recent years. Good enough isn't good enough. You have to show continuously increasing results to follow the demands of society. It leaves the teachers under pressure to teach you the required syllabus at the scheduled time, and maybe it leaves the teachers without needed focus on important alternative perspectives, which could be of huge importance for some or many students. And worst case, without necessary personal feedback to each single pupil, including showing genuine concern for his or her development, and urgent questions to and challenges from life. Children and young people in our schools and educational institutions are daily giving the teachers precious gifts by opening up their thoughts. They are posing questions, often questions hooked up on news, on own experiences, on own beliefs and understandings. Of course, teachers can't react and go into all these gifts, but if the daily regular routine is to just ignore and neglect, we let many important chances go. Chances where we have the opportunity to get dialogues on topics which in itself could be very preventive and contributing to building up the greater we on an inclusive foundation. After the terrible attacks around in the world, we have, for example, experienced the need for discussions in many classes, and as mentioned in the RAN Edu Manifesto, which I can show you here, educators should try starting a dialogue with their students about these sensitive and difficult topics related to personal feelings, principles, and beliefs. These dialogues can at least be challenged from two sides. First, if you're not one of the we and ultimately excluded as one of them due to your negative and/or marginalized position in the class, why should you then participate in discussions where your marginalized position once again maybe will be exhibited? Second, if you as teacher are caught in the official curricular system, why, where and how should you leave the classroom for these dialogues when you have so many serious curricular bound things to do? If you, for example, are having the class for only 1 or 2 hours a week, why and how should you leave your curriculum for these difficult and demanding topics? Another serious challenge, according to the studies by Karin Kittelmann-Flensner and Laura Gillum from Denmark, can be the secularist discourse in our schools and classrooms. In itself, it may be challenging to be a religious person in the Swedish and Danish schools, and maybe it's the same situation in other countries too. Is it better to be a non-religious person if you want to be a part of the greater we? According to the conventions, we could hope for a no, but the researchers show us a small but bitter yes. Maybe we have to look on how the possibilities are to be religious persons in our schools so that all children are having open possibilities to be a part of the greater we in the class and on the school. In our workshops under the Aarhus model, we have an exercise which throws light, I'll show it to you here, which throws light on how the discussion environment in the class are. We ask simply, can you express yourself exactly like you want to in your class? We put numbers from 1 to 5 on the floor, and the students can go to the 1 if they totally disagree, to the 5 if they totally agree, and so on. The instructors will then ask the students why they are standing where they are, and often the students are giving their fellow students and the teachers many surprises here. Often we hear statements about teasing, demeaning laughter, body gestures, bullying, etc. And often these phenomena aren't seen and known by others than the person who expressed the thoughts. Therefore, this exercise almost every time ends up in a very fruitful discussion how it is to be me, you and us in the class. Teachers maybe realize that some students are pretty far from feeling themselves as a part of a greater we. I think this is a splendid example on how a simple feedback among the students and between the students and the teachers make changes possible. On very few informations brought in very few minutes, you maybe experience a greater distance to each other, but very soon you have the possibility to change direction toward each other based on mutual understanding of and caring for personal differences. So maybe you over time are inviting more people into a better understanding on underlying mechanisms in the we culture in the class. As I mentioned in my introductory, I'm driving around in the pure green zone. In the zone where we are all still there, but in the zone where we maybe start up letting somebody leave and go. I've used ordinary in- and exclusion theories to describe these ordinary natural similarities in our educational system to point out how we may and probably can let all in and let the educational system be a part of preventing violent extremism and radicalization, even though it at this point seems very far away. This gives me the opportunity to ask, what kind of curriculum will best serve our children and young people to avoid marginalization and excluding mechanisms in our educational system? And one of the reasons why we seriously have to answer this question is that maybe worst case, as I mentioned, these mechanisms for some persons can lead to very serious matters like violent extremism and radicalization. And another question could be, what about giving motivational factors in our schools and inspection? Are we maybe too traditional in thinking that children and young people bring their motivation into schools without any consideration about how much motivation we can create in the schools, motivation driven by empathic approach, trustful relations, recognition, appreciation, possibilities to handle curriculum, possibilities to handle and cope with different daily social situations, possibilities to be yourself as you are and not as you better should be. The classroom ought to have motivational factors so that everyone matters every day. My point is that all our special design interventions with workshop, camps, mentors, etc. are seriously needed, but my recommendation is that these interventions can't do the necessary work alone. We have to let them go hand in hand with our daily perspective on children and young people, with our daily focus on balance and well-being, We have to let this go hand in hand with the possibility for teachers and leaders to have this focus partly because they are educated to and partly because the curriculum gives them the possibility to work with this orientation. And locally, on the schools, first of all, we could start by asking ourselves, are we having a kind of school ethos? Who are we? Who are in the we? Who is defining the we? Is it a dynamic we changing over time automatically because the persons in it changes? Can we furnish the schools and educational systems, institutions so that the teachers and professionals are educated to have better possibilities to focus on needed dialogues when they are needed, daily focus on individual balance between skills and tasks, daily focus on giving all children, regardless to religion, politics, etc., the same possibilities to be a full-blown part of the greater we without leaving a part of themselves outside the school. Daily focus on trust building, daily focus on creating educational environments where we can avoid loss of self-control, both for the children, young people, and the professionals. I think we have to create conflict-solving education, media education, and political education in our schools so that we continuously are able to take the needed dialogues and discussions in the classrooms. This will daily give teachers and the possibility, direct and indirect, to discuss, put focus on, and fight against simplicity, ambiguity, monomania, and simple-mindedness. We could be inspired by the question, is it right to do something just because everyone else is doing it? From Anthony Doerr's masterpiece, All the Lights We Can't See. If we leave the green zone for a moment, just for a moment, and go into the yellow and even orange-red zone, we may hope that these thoughts, mechanisms and initiatives could be useful also for youngsters who cross the line and went into extremism and radicalization and now are on their way back. I'll finally, once again, invite you to have a small view on the beautiful picture painted by the Danish painter Malte Engelsted in 1885. The painting is called At the Headmaster's Office. Here you see it. I think we all know the situation, and back then also what's going to happen. Here we see a little boy, and we may agree that there is no too early intervention when we talk about building trust and ways to learn. Today we may use the painting to think about how our schools and institutions are able, in the green area, to prevent negative development among children and young people. There is something this little guy didn't do well as expected. Was it because he didn't want to, or because he couldn't do it? Maybe his skills and mindset didn't give him the possibilities to do as wanted, and maybe the headmaster understands what the situation demands, and therefore, in a moment after this painting has been painted, sits down with the boy talking about how he in the future
Thank you very much, Jesper. I
of,
think it was a very good speech, and also we got the first request to have your presentation later on, so you did well. Perhaps a short question to you. You said something about being we. What would be a first hint to do so? If you cannot force people to say, now we are we. What would be a start?
Whoa, what a good question, Martin. What could be the thought? Well, it could go into thoughts about who is creating this we actually, who is defining the we, how is our traditions about...
Okay, well, thank you very much for now, Jesper. And I think this is also a very good bridge to go on now to the city of Antwerp, where Karin Heremans is joining us. Karin is headmaster of a school in the city center of Antwerp. And she also experienced in her school how a we culture also became a them and a we and us and them culture. So I give you the floor, Karin. Good luck with your presentation. Your 20 minutes of stage are here. There you go.
Okay, can you put on my presentation? Thank you. Hello everyone, Antwerp talking here. First of all, I think it's necessary to explain you the educational system in Belgium. In Belgium, we have 3 separate educational systems, the Dutch, the French and the German, and we also have a high degree of free choice. In Flanders, we have public education and we have private education, and you need to know that my school, the Royal Athenian of Antwerp, is part of the public education. It's part of the GO, the Flemish Community Educational System, and the GO is bound to neutrality according to the Belgian Constitution. That means that the community organizes neutral education, and neutrality includes respecting the pupils and their parents' philosophical, ideological or religious opinions. So schools run by public authorities offer education in all the recognized religions as well as in secular ethics. As long as they are in compulsory education, pupils can choose one of them, and that's important for the rest of my explanation. We are working with this neutrality in the form of active pluralism and active citizenship. That means that our starting point is not that everyone is, can or should be neutral, but that means that every individual sees things differently, and we need to engage in dialogue beyond the boundaries of ideological convictions. No ideological conviction is given preference, and the dialogue is founded on equality. Those who enter into dialogue can only do so on equal footing. So the values we work with give us a framework of neutrality in which we can engage in dialogue on an equal and reciprocal basis, and that's important. So our educational project is focused on teaching and educating and on the development of the total personality. It's an individual development and a social project. So now with the recent evolutions in Europe, we are making a focus shift from active pluralism to active citizenship because we are currently in the process of updating and clarifying the educational project. And our baseline is learning together, living together. So let's go now to the Royal Atheneum of Antwerp. We're in the city, in the center of Antwerp, and we're a school with a lot of history in Flanders and in Belgium. And we had a lot of impact on ideological and political movements in Flanders, and also now, in the present, we find ourselves in the middle of the debate of emancipation and integration in Antwerp and in Flanders. Why? Because we have students of more than 60 nationalities. The world is coming to us. And within our students, we have 100 refugees or newcomers every year. So we have experience with refugees from almost 20 years, and we developed special programs for them to integrate them. So in the actual discussion, it can be very useful. Also important to note is that most of our people are ticking high on the box of socioeconomic indicators. That means that more than 70% does not speak Dutch at home, that more than 70% has a mother without a certificate of a secondary education, and that more than 80% is living in poor neighborhoods in the city of Antwerp. Also, most of our students, almost 70%, are Muslim students, but also the other religions and philosophies are present at school. Our policy started after 9/11, 10 days after my starting here as a principal of the school. And everyone remembers the confrontations, the polarization what was happening in schools. And there were a lot of discussions, and students said to me that they were very angry because students from ex-Yugoslavia or Iran, Iraq, they said to the teachers and to me, for our relatives, our family, no one ever held 1 minute of silence. And that's why we discussed with the teachers, and that's what we decided to create a new minute of silence and to expand it. And that way of thinking, that's the we from Jesper, became the baseline of our policy. To dialogue in a sense of with a lot of empathy for the others. And I explained to the children what is close to us, what is happening close to us, and nowadays for us it's Brussels, and it's also Paris. But for some of them it's not so close. And the things that are happening in Syria, in Beirut, in other countries where our students are coming from are close for them. And that's why it's necessary to go to the middle. And when in a society, when extremes are touching, it's very important to go to the middle and to develop a policy of the middle and to invest in the middle to avoid tensions at schools and tensions in society. So we held a new minute of silence after 9/11, and 15 years later we held a lot of minutes of silence, and I can assure you it's very silent if you expand it and if you do it with empathy for everyone. So we saw that it worked, and during the last 15 years we worked it out in a structure linked to the pedagogical project of the Go with learning outcomes, and we also defined our mission from toddler to world citizen, and we developed a policy vision of the school in the context of active pluralism. Our policy vision is supported by 3 pillars, and the first pillar is based on a 4-year cycle of recurrent universal themes. Those themes are in the school, in the different lessons, and the different teachers are working within it, and it are the 4 themes, universal themes: time, choice, space, and human being. We connected policy actions to each theme, and it's in a circle. So the policy is became in 15 years more professional and more deep. We have a working group of teachers on the various religious and ethics, also with teachers of science, history, and languages. We developed a project on identity with training sessions for teachers and students, and we have defined a basic set of common values. We also changed the word tolerance to reciprocity, because tolerance is passive and reciprocity asks an engagement. It's a very active word. So that's why we are focusing on active citizenship, on democratic values and critical thinking. And so we defined our baseline in time and space. The human being is expected to make the right choices to enable them to develop into a world citizen. But in all those dialogues, we find out that active pluralism and active citizenship is not completely optional or without reciprocal commitments. So we defined a common base of key values, like the honoring universal human rights, the mutual respect, the freedom of choice, the freedom of the self-determination of the individual, the freedom of speech, the equality between men and women, the secularism, separation of church and state, the neutrality of the government, and the dogma-free scientific research. In all the radicalization process, we can distinguish 3 peaks, and the first peak was after 9/11, but we had a second peak in radicalization in 2008-2009, when Sharia for Belgium was coming up in Antwerp and Brussels, and we had a kind of infiltration in the school. In fact, that's what we are realizing as now, because we had a clash between religious freedom and freedom of choice. Some students were manipulating other students by wearing the headscarf, wearing the veil, and being a good Muslim. So there was a lot of pressure in school, and our pedagogical project was threatened. And that's why we need, after 2 years of discussions, we need to prohibit all religious symbols in school to protect the freedom of everyone. And in jurisdiction, it's called proselytism, manipulation by a religion. So we need to do it because we need to develop a critical sensibility towards the making of personal choices. And I can refer to European jurisdiction where there are some cases. They say that the prohibition on religious symbols can be a protection of the freedom of worship rather than a limitation. It's the case of Laila Sahin on the court of Strasbourg. The third peak in radicalization is situated in 2012. Until now, we are still confronting it these days, and it's connected to the problems regarding Syria and Daesh. The cities of Vilvoorde and Antwerp had a lot of foreign fighters, a lot of young boys who left for Syria. And also in my school in 2012 I had a boy who left for Syria. And I had the conversations with him personally, so that's why I was able to distinguish, to analyze what was happening in his mind, and it's important that I tell you a bit of story. At a certain moment there was a group of young boys with a charismatic leader who came into my office and who wanted to discuss about religious rules in school. They wanted to pray, they wanted to stop the lessons for praying, I said them first it was not possible, and when I'm talking this I realize that in a lot of other European countries probably it would be possible, but here it's not possible. And we had discussions, and the young boys, they came after, they came back every day with other arguments, and it was very clear to me that it weren't their arguments, that it was an operation, a strategic operation. And I talked with one of the boys, and I said, I gave him the example of a trolley driver, and I said, a trolley driver, he can't stop with his tram or his bus to pray at 1 at noon. And he looked at me, the boy, and he said, but ma'am, I don't want to be a trolley driver. I want to give my life for Allah. And that's why I'm showing you here the logical levels of Bateson, because the boy took this, the message of this boy was very literal, and at that moment I didn't realize it, because 3 weeks later he left for Syria. So he made his future became the life after, the afterlife. And I will illustrate, I like to illustrate it with the logical levels from Bateson, because we are working in our school a lot with those logical levels. On the basement you have the environment, and young boys and girls, like also said Jesper, they are living in different environments, the environment of home, of schools, of the friends, the religion, and also the internet, and the internet becomes more and more real. And they have different behavior in those different environments, and they are using different competences and different capacities, so they are developing different values and beliefs. And and that's at a certain moment, at 14, 15 years old, they have a problem of identity, and we are making clear with the school that your identity has different layers. It's not only religion, it's not only being a good sportsman, it's not only being a good physician. Identity has different layers. And now I refer to the onion of Kadisha. Hi Kadisha, I know that you are listening to me. We explain to the students that you have a religion, you aren't a religion, and it's a part of your identity. And that's very important in our school policy. In the meantime, I discovered with those young boys that radicalization is a process and that it conceals other problems. It started by, in my school, it started by the rejection of democratic values and of society, and also of a very religious behavior in words and in deeds, and using certain terms like kafir or al-walabara, and with a visible empathy for Al-Qaeda also and Daesh. The students who left and the students who were in the group were also very obsessive on the internet, and they had intensive anonymous activities. There is also a kind of money in it. A sale of possessions, and because they eat less, there is a weight loss, and they become more and more isolated from their immediate environment, and they are breaking away from friends and relatives. And so this is the same process that are used by sects, where the caliphate transcends the traditional sect model, and that's why we need a large-scale concentrated international approach for tackling Daesh. And we also need to realize that radicalization conceals deeper, different other problems. So what do we do at our school? Like I said, we started an intercultural, interreligious dialogue after 9/11 with the teachers of the different religions and ethics, and we are expanding it, and we put it in a learning pathway. How do I relate to my own worldview? How do I relate to others, and how do I relate to society? We do a lot of democratic exercises. We have the teaching team as example for teaching students how to motivate choices, how to go in an effective involvement, and we are stimulating empathy and reciprocity. We are discussing about various themes, very actual themes, and now this year and also last year we had a lot of workshops about identity, because it's very important for our students on this moment. We have also 3 surveys per year amongst all students regarding religious philosophical worldview, the view of man, the view of the world, the view of society. We are giving training to our teachers regarding historical and political context, the historical context of the Middle East, but also the historical context of the Enlightenment. We are giving trainings where we are using the logical levels from Bateson to students and teachers, and we are working with role models, because our students, they need heroes. They need heroes here in Europe and not heroes in Syria. They need heroes here, and that's why we are working with role models. We have a lot of conversations between teachers, student guidance, and student parents. We have a policy of participation with teachers and parents and other organizations. We are an open school. We held a lot of lectures by specialists in various fields, and we also participate in the working group of the King Baldwin Foundation, Islam and Muslims in Belgium. And then the school has a single function to the student guidance and to the melting point of the city of Antwerp and the team of radicalization and also the police. And then last but not least, our very beautiful project Athena Syntax, where science and religious and philosophical worldviews and art are connected. And it started when, a few years ago, when the teacher of science, he went with the teachers of religious and ethics to the museum, and he saw there an artwork of Lawrence Weiner and Liam Gillick. They came in my office and they said, we found it, we found a solution. We will do the dialogue and we will introduce art in the school. And since that moment, we are having art workshops with professional artists in the school at different moments. And why we are using art? Because art it offers a lot of freedom of expression. It doesn't. It has no limits, and it can be a mirror for the soul, and we are using art as a sublimating and clarifying factor for the students, and the results are very beautiful. And next week we will put on a film on the internet, and I will share it with you, where you can see all the projects they do. So what's our aim? At the school level, we are going for a management for solidarity, and we are looking always for common values. We are looking for active citizenship, and like I said, it's very important to invest in the middle. We are aiming towards reciprocity, and we are favoring a trans-religious and philosophical and trans-cultural attitude. We are also strengthening the development of identity and enhancing resilience of our students. We are stimulating well-being, and we are giving our students hope and a perspective on the future. And we are strengthening social cohesion and connection with society. We are trying to make a matching of the free time and the parents, because when you look to the logical levels, it's very important to connect the different environments to each other and to make them more strong. Please note that radical ideas are part of adolescence, and that in the case of extreme radicalization, we are dealing with individual cases. So it's important to trace them and to isolate them in the school, and to realize that remedial interventions are tailor-made. I will give you some tools for all schools, tools based on the different meetings we had with Iran and on my personal experience. It's very important to open the phenomenon of radicalization to discussions and to talk about it. Then we need to be aware that radicalization and the prevention of radicalization requires tailor-made remedies. We need to focus on a socially safe learning environment and dialogue also, and we need to focus on a sense of belonging. We need to guide our students toward a positive development of their identity and critical thinking, and we also need to invest in group processes. We need to assemble a team of teachers. It's not a task for one teacher alone. You need to do it in team with teachers with different competencies. The knowledge of the Islam is very useful, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary to focus only on the Islam. You need to focus on the large environment of students. We need to invest in history lessons and media literacy. And we need to develop a broad and open schools. We bring the world into the classroom and we go with the students into the world. Also, don't hesitate to get parents involved and invest in networks and partnerships, very important for developing the school project. And for art projects, we suggest that you invite professional artists and arts organizations to bring their experience into the school. And last but not least, it's very important on a European level to focus on active world citizenship. So that's our dream. We are going for a new European enlightenment based on the universal moral rules of reciprocity, a code of conduct supported by all spiritual and ethical traditions, religions and philosophies. And concrete, that means make practical agreements in mutual respect concerning the place of philosophies and religions in our society today. Invest in education, invest in critical thinking, in democratic values and in active citizenship. And so what I was telling to you, it's a work of 15 years. And like I said, we will share to you a film that we took on different moments in the school. We started it in the end of September and we finished last week. The film would be finished this evening and we like to share it with you. On my presentation, some slides are added of the RAN meetings. But I can share them to you because there are some interesting information on the process on radicalizations and the factors of radicalizations. And for the end, I show you some pictures of our students who are working on art. Here you see graphics, photography. Also, this was on the theme of life and death. Installations. We try to involve all the art disciplines into the school. So that was my presentation. Bye-bye, Europe.
Well, please don't go away, Karin, because there will be questions also to you, and I also invite Jasper to come back on the screen. Perhaps first of all, you just mentioned that you were working hard at this moment on these values of the Enlightenment, but in the same time you just, well, only 1 month ago you experienced Brussels. What is the situation at your school at this moment, Karin?
The situation at my school, everything is going very well. Like I said, after the moment of silence, after the attacks in Brussels, we held a moment of silence, and like I told you, we expanded it. And I had someone of the Islamic school, the Erasmus High School in Brussels, and I talked with the teachers and with the students and the teachers, and we explained why we will expand the minute of silence. And I asked the students to give each other a hug, and I hugged the Islam teacher. And after the minute of silence, some students came to ask, why are you hugging a woman, to the Islamic teacher? And then he explained it and he countered fear. It was a really nice counter narrative, a very good example of countering, because we were all hurt by what happened in Brussels, and that was the meaning of the minute of silence, to connect on a very empathic way everyone in that room. And it was very touching, so everything is going well here.
Okay, that's very good to hear. We have some questions from people who have been listening and watching us over the last 45 minutes. And the first question we got was from Harold Weinberg from Berlin. And he asked us how to involve communities into the school and into the educational system, how to build a kind of bottom-up approach when it comes to respect in schools and outside of schools with communities. Who would like to have a go on that? Could you do that, Jesper? Then Karin can rest for a while because she did a speech.
Yes.
I'll start up. I think we had very good examples from Karin's presentation about your question, Heremans, and hello to you. I'm thinking about, I was talking about gifts in daily life, in daily school life, gifts coming from the pupils, from the children and young people. And I said, I think we are too busy going on with the curricular things, so we don't snap out all those gifts we are having from the children and young people. And I think it would be a very, very good way to go bottom up with our conventional thoughts and so on in our future aspect, to go into ask questions into the children's wonderful questions. And that's what I learned from myself and my own practice when I was a teacher and a second headmaster on a school. It was going into what's going on in the daily life from the children and young people perspective. And then things are going on automatically. If you're having these rights, you don't even have a student council or something like that to prepare things. It just goes on automatically, I would say. So that's my first thoughts about this question, bottom up. It's a lot about the environment in the school. Things comes often automatically if the environment are trustful and, well, if the teachers are having the time for you, beside the ordinary curriculum.
And perhaps to have another question on that, Jesper, like just Karin said in her in her speech that a lot of the parents are in that case Dutch speaking, but perhaps with you it's the same with Danish speaking. How would you reach out to a community then? Because a lot of people who will say, well, we cannot talk to those parents, so what should we do with this community?
Well, that's a very, very good question. So we have, and again, we have a lot of things to do into that. And again, we have to think about how is the we, are they a part of our we, the parents? Are they coming, if it gives meaning to them, they'll come to our meetings, to our parties, to everything, if it gives meaning to them. If they stay at home, it's because it doesn't give meaning to them. So first of all, again, we have to think about, about the we. How are we defining our environment in the school? Are we actually inviting all the people we would like to have in the schools, regardless to the languages? Because we can always cope with each other without having a direct language to speak with. We can do other things. You can give somebody a hug, just like Karin did with the Islamic teacher.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to change subject, Karin, because we still have quite a lot of questions to go, and we have to be there before 5. And I think that was a remark made on your presentation, which is very interesting, by Daniela Kuntop. And she says, who decides who is going to be a role model, or what is a role model actually? Is that someone we consider worth imitating, or how are you going to choose who is the role model?
The role models, they're all people that my teachers or I met during the year. It are also students, it are healthy workers. We have the IT Woman of the Year, who was an old student of my school. But we also have a girl who was rejected by her family and who had a lot of identity problems and who came to tell us about the identity problems. And we're working with those role models because we want to show to our students that life, it's not one direct line. Life it goes that, and it depends on people you meet and on choices you make at that moment. And life is not easy always, and we are almost always looking for people who who became someone in life, but who had a lot of struggles to become there, and they come to explain how they reacted in those different circumstances. But we work 2 days on this. So we first do the role models, and then we use the logical levels of Bateson, and we try to develop a dream with our children. We help them to find a mission of their lives, and then we are helped with professionals who are coaching them to drown their life dream, and students appreciate it a lot. They do.
Okay.
Is it clear?
Yes, I think that's clear, and I think it's also very important that you say it's not only about pushing a role model into the school, but you also have to reach out to the pupils then to make a connection, and also to see that's also a chance for them. I then have, I think, yes, a remark which is for the both of you. Sadia Khan just put on the chat that he said when he studied education and radicalization, this subject, he said very often there's a conflict of values on what people get on the school, what they get at home, perhaps also in the media. How do you react as a school on it? Because perhaps you are very respectful and you say, well, you are fully citizens, but in other places people get other messages. How do you work on that? Jesper first, please.
Yeah, that's into directly. I think Karin has been directly into that too. But it's again about critical thinking. You know, if you're brought up from the first class and upwards, you're used to ask questions about how is this going on? How do we have to trust him and her, or who is? And what about the press? What about the newspapers? What about the news in the telly? What is the truth actually? I have so many examples of students going directly into what they call the truth, which they had from the news, you know. So we have again to have an environment where we are talking about who is actually telling the truth. If it's not you, could it be me? Who's actually having this responsibility about the truth? So it's again, excuse me for saying it again, but it is actually I was in a situation recently where a whole class they all agreed what was told in the news yesterday was right, and the teacher didn't do anything about it. So I asked them, are you sure this is a right thing which we heard in the news? And they were just then starting thinking about, well, probably it wasn't a right news story. This history about a man in a very negative way, you know. So we have to create this critical thinking environment like Karin beautifully has described for us at her school.
Okay.
Can I adjust something? Yes, I want to. I think we need to realize that some students, some children can feel very lonely between all those different identities, and that's why we need to strengthen them and to support them in their development. And that's why we use art, because art makes them free to express, and when we see the results, you see a lot of feelings in their artworks. But it's important that we realize that they are balancing between those different worlds, and they like to integrate it. And that's the role of schools, to integrate their different worlds into their personality, to become someone in life. And it gives you a way to talk about the different things also.
Okay. Well, thank you. Actually, this was meant to be the last question, but then we got another one very interesting in, and I would like you to reflect shortly on it, and actually that doesn't pay any value to the question, which is very important. Tommaso Vergili asks us, do you work only on the framework, or do you also challenge the substance of certain interpretation of religious rules? So are you challenging religion or religious interpretation or not in your school?
It's a question for me or for Jesper?
Well, you can both have a go on it. Who wants to have a go?
So we are focusing on active citizenship, and we do a dialogue between all the religions, but we put the common values in the middle because it's our shared values. And we invite Islamic experts and to show to the students that it are shared values, it are our values, it are values who are also in the Quran. I'm not an expert, that's why I'm doing it together with someone who has expertise in the Islam and with the Islamic teacher to counter the narrative, but also to give an alternative narrative to them and to show your religion is a part of your identity and it can have a place in your life, but in your total personality, it's only a part. So we do it with a lot of respect, but we focus on active citizenship as a baseline.
Jesper, you have a point to make on that as well?
On this short time, I don't have anything to add to Karin's good way of saying it. No, okay. I haven't anything to add.
Well, thank you very much. And this also will be the end of this webinar. And I would like to thank you all for attending us. I would like to thank Karin Heremans and Jasper Holm for giving their ideas and their experience today during this webinar. As we said before, this webinar will be put on the internet later on. So if you want to have another look at it, or you want to attend your colleagues on that, please do so. The next webinar will be announced soon on the site of Deutsche-Prävinar and also of the Radicalisation Awareness Network. For today, I would like to thank the people from Stiftung Bürgermut from Berlin who did the technique today, which is always a very big challenge, although we live in the digital world. And for now, I would like to thank you, and perhaps we see each other next time on another webinar of Deutsche-Prävinar and Radicalisation Awareness Network. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye.